Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Running Otaku. I am the Running Otaku. And today is the first in a series of videos I'm going to be doing across the running spectrum. So I'll talk to different runners of different abilities, different distances, different points in their career, and even different geographies around the world. I also hope to talk to product managers of running related products, maybe even some founders of running related companies, and others in the running media space. So if you have an interesting story to tell, drop me a line and perhaps we'll set up an interview with you in the not too distant future. So for today, we'll be talking with Evan Schwartz. Now this is a story of a blue collar runner who was good, but not great in high school, walked onto his college team, got cut from his college team, and then dedicated himself to many years of crazy miles of training and ultimately qualified for the 2020 US Men's Olympic Marathon Trials that's going to be taking place in Atlanta in just a few months. So in this interview, we'll talk about his incredible training regimen, about his move from Ohio to Boulder, Colorado, and many other interesting topics. In fact, in the show notes below, I'll timestamp each of those topics so you can feel free to jump around from one topic to the other as you see fit. Okay, so without any further ado, let's go ahead and meet Evan now. Everyone, welcome to Running Otaku's very first interview. We are here with Evan Schwartz. We'll get into his background in a little bit. I'm going to ask him a few questions, and I think we'll have a lot of interesting things for all you folks out there. Evan, how are you doing today?
I am great. Thanks so much for having me on. It was good to be able to duck out of work like 30 minutes early, so I can work 30 minutes more at the end of the day. But it's great to be here.
So I see a white wall and a window covering and a light above. You could
Yep.
be anywhere in the world. Where are you coming in from?
I am in Boulder, Colorado. You could not tell by my backdrop. It looks very, very plain, but I am in Boulder, Colorado. It's a great place to be.
Like this, as beautiful as I've heard.
It is picturesque. The pictures don't do it justice, though. You don't realize how big like actual mountains are until you're like right at the base of them. So I quite enjoy being here.
Excellent, excellent. So in researching this for this interview, we've actually met once before.
Yep.
Evan works for Stride, and we'll talk about that. And at the expo before the Boston Marathon, I met Evan for the first time. He told me what wattage I should run at, and of course, I didn't listen to him and bonked. so shame on me. But I discovered I knew you were a very good runner, but some of the things that you've done in the past have been incredible. So I wanted to get into that a little bit. I thought the first question I would ask is, last week, how many miles did you run?
Last week, I think I ran 106.2 miles.
And
I just filled in my running log, so 106.2.
so I know a lot of runners, kind of the sub-elite and elite level, will get into the 100-mile weeks right as they're getting to the peak of their
hmm
marathons
hmm
training. Do you have a marathon on the immediate horizon?
I will be running a marathon. I will not be racing a marathon on the immediate horizon. In the third week of October, I'm going back home to Columbus, Ohio, where I'm from, and I'll be pacing the 2:45 group for hopefully helping some elite women qualify for the Olympic Trials in the marathon. So that's something I just found out the other day. I got my registration link. So the plan is to run dead on like 6:18 per mile and just try and help some women qualify.
Fantastic. So have you paced a marathon before?
I have paced a marathon before, actually. My friend, my roommate that I lived with in Columbus before I moved out to Boulder, he ran the Cleveland Marathon, and his goal was it was his first marathon. So as we all know, it goes perfectly according to plan. The weather is never an issue. Digestion and fuel is never an issue. But I was supposed to help him run somewhere in the mid 220s. We did right around that for the first half, and then it got a little bit difficult for him. And
I can imagine.
the way the course worked, it was the Cleveland Marathon. So the first half, it's its own half marathon. There's about 70 turns in the first 13 miles, so that's lovely and pleasant. But then the marathon just does a really long out and back, and so I got to like miles 16, 17. I was like, well, I might as well run back. So I ended up doing that. I think I was like sixth overall or something like that. I ran 2:33, and it was the week after like one of my goal races, and I was like, oh, that was pretty fun. So I have done a pacing duty for a marathon before, so I'm pretty confident in it.
Okay. The reason I asked is I'm doing my first pacing duty
Mm,
for the Portland Marathon. We have a half marathon, so I'll be pacing the 1 hour 50 half marathoners.
nice. Yeah.
I'm wondering how to hold the sign. Do you have any
Ooh.
advice?
I don't know if I'll hold a sign. I might get like a bib or a jersey or something that just says 245, because I
Okay.
think like the aerodynamic drag that would come in when you're trying to run like 10 miles an hour or something, that might be significant. But I have done that for some other races, like maybe a 5K or a 10K, or I've had friends that done that. You want to alternate arms for sure.
Okay.
Like definitely don't just hold it in your right arm, because then like you're gonna have a huge bicep on your right side, and then your left arm is gonna be paled in comparison. But I think it is harder if you're trying to run faster with a sign like that. So they usually slim them down. I know if it's like a 3 hour pacer, or they say just look for this person that's going to be pacing like that. So
Okay. All right. So getting back to the mileage, you said,
sure.
was it 106.6, 100.6?
Yeah, 106 miles. That was like the past 2 weeks. I think we're both at 106.
So like I said, for most runners, even at the kind of elite level, they tend to breach the 100-mile or 160-kilometer range, when they're sort of in the peak of their marathon training. But from what I can discern from reading what you wrote on Reddit and stuff,
Mhm.
that's almost below average week for you year round. Tell us a little bit about your training volume.
Sure. So I guess there's a little bit of backstory to that. In high school, in like I graduated high school in 2011, and I built up to what I thought was high mileage at the time. Of I ran over 50 miles in one week, and I was
Mhm.
like, this is I'm running more than 7 miles a day. I'm doing 10 miles for a long run. Like that's great. That's high mileage. And it definitely was at the time. And I think that's anybody that's reaching a new, kind of plateau or a peak. It feels difficult at the time. When I got to college, all of a sudden I got jumped up to like 70 miles a week. I was like, oh my, this is 10 miles a day on average. And we might have an off day or something like that. So
Yeah.
that was high mileage. But my running career took a little bit of turn. So I was coaching myself after the fall of my sophomore year, and I decided I wanted to start training for road stuff. And I just found a really good groove building up to, over the next like 2 years, about up to 100 miles, something like that, um, in around like 2015
So you
or
weren't
something like
running
that.
for your university in college after
Right.
sophomore year?
Yeah. So out of high school, I ran 15:54 for 5K cross country. I ran like 4:34 in the mile, 9:43 in the 2 miles. So I wasn't, like a state qualifier, like an all state person, but I was a good local runner. And so the coach at the Ohio State University at the time, Robert Gary, gave me a walk on spot at the team. And that means I was able to practice with the team. I didn't get, scholarship or anything, but I was a member of the varsity team. And then he left for Furman University, where he coaches still. And they brought in a new coach. That fall, I actually had a pretty good fall. I ran like 26:02 for 8K cross country.
Yeah.
I ran 32:12 for 10K on the roads as like a post season race. And then I was told I wasn't fast enough to retain a roster spot, so I got cut off the team after I ran 32:12 for 10K. And so I was like, you know what? I don't want to stop running. So I liked running a 10K on the roads. That was fun.
Yeah.
The only experience I had before that was when I was like a sophomore in high school. I thought I, could easily run a 10K on the roads fast. And it turns out that, when you're 15 years old or something, it's not the easiest thing to do. So I decided to keep running, train for, half marathon, eventually build up to a full marathon in 2015. So over the course of 2 years after getting cut, based off like my cross country times, I was
Yeah.
able to actually run like that cross country time for a half marathon all the way through, after just building up the volume and stuff. But yeah, I like the high mileage. But year over year, it was like, okay, I peaked at 70 miles for this year. The next year, I just happened to average 70 miles a week, and then it just kept building like that for a couple of years, up to the point of where I got up to about 120 miles a week on average for a year. And then I, would peak a lot higher than that, but I wouldn't maintain, like 130, 40, 50 miles a week, something like that,
Did you
because that's
sustain?
a little bit too much.
Did you get any overuse issues, injuries along the way, or?
No, actually, after my freshman year of cross country in college. That was the last time that I was hurt, was in 2011 into 2012, until actually this past winter when I just had like a really freak out of nowhere. I think it was, I was overdue for an injury, knock on wood, like,
Hmm.
so many percentage runners get hurt per year. But I actually had my first like Achilles injury in like 8 years, something like that, this past winter. But no overuse stuff. I felt bad. I felt tired. So that's like an overuse injury in the moment, but no real injuries that forced me to take time off. I ran for, you know, I think my running streak was like 5.5 or 6 years at one point, until I finally was like, okay, I need to rest my Achilles. And then I had a 3 month off period this past winter, but no overuse injuries. It was actually when I lowered my mileage and I was running less, was when I actually got hurt for the first time.
Running harder, more intense, but shorter, or just
Yeah, I don't even. It was just such a freak thing out of nowhere. I ran, like a easy 6 mile run. I was doing some testing for Stride. We were testing some like hill responsiveness near like one of the local like hilly neighborhoods and stuff. And then the next day, I tried to do a workout on the treadmill, and my lower calf, I was like, yeah, something's not quite right. I'm gonna jog,
yeah.
a little bit on it, and then all of a sudden, it was just an acute Achilles tendonitis injury that took 3 months and a lot of time and patience, and a lot of begging with the running gods of saying like, yeah, I'll stop doubling if you let me run, or I'll run 70 miles a week if you let me run. But it took quite a while. But yeah, none of the mileage or anything ever caused any of that stuff. It was just a kind of freak thing out of nowhere.
So you mentioned doubling. It's funny, when we were scheduling this interview, I was
Yeah.
saying, well, let's do it for a night when you don't double. And you said, a night without doubling, what's that? And I thought you were joking, but you probably do run twice a day, 7 days a week. Is that right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I still think if I wasn't training to be competitive, I just like running. Even if I couldn't use running in the morning and running in the evening as a way to improve my fitness, I just like it. I find it as like a relaxing, kind of mental checkout from some of the stressors. I like being able to kind of interact with, especially here, like the local nature. Get out on a soft surface path, go
Hmm.
run some trails, stuff like that. So that was definitely tongue in cheek. But yeah, I do run twice a day. I find that it helps too if I am trying to maintain a certain volume or a certain like average miles per day, miles per week. I stay a lot more healthy, injury free. That's how I've been able to run, for so many years at a pretty high volume, pretty high load, just without stressing myself by running one longer run per day. I can split it up.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Evan's being a little bit modest. In that Reddit post I was referring to, it was about his California International Marathon,
Hmm.
CIM, in which he ran. What time did you run?
Yeah, I ran 2:18:19. It was my second marathon. It went a lot better than my first marathon.
Wow. So
Yeah.
that's an Olympic Trials Qualifier, right?
Yeah, it's a B standard, so it gets me there. And the Atlanta Track Club is making equivalences for the A and B standard. So in the past, if you had run like 2:15 or faster, you get everything paid for when you get there. The B standard in the past for 2016, 2012, 2008, it had just been okay. You get to show up and you get a spot on the line. But Atlanta Track Club's really investing in a lot of the B qualifiers by saying we will pay for this portion of your airfare. We'll give you a hotel room and stuff, because in the past it had been about $1,000, $1,200 total to actually like get to the trials and be there. But it actually makes a really big difference in terms of, I feel like, keeping people competitive and giving them kind of that goal if there's that
Yeah.
you know not huge paycheck like looming over them. But yeah, I qualified via the B standard in December of 2017.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thanks. It still doesn't feel real. It still feels like I'm a pretender.
So at the start line for the Olympic trials, do you think you're going to be nervous, relieved, happy,
Oh no,
euphoric? What?
excited. It's another race. It's a fun race. It's a thing that only comes along so often. I think that if you're not nervous, like I think you should be nervous, but if you're not nervous, it means you probably don't care enough, and you're not excited. Nervous energy is good. Feeling like super anxious, I've definitely been there. Like you feel like you have all this pressure and stuff. But I've learned over the years that the next day will come, or I'll get to the cool down, or I'll get to the part after the race. That will happen eventually. I'll be back at my desk at work eventually. You have these things in the future that kind of tie you a little bit more down, a little bit more secure. But I hope I'm nervous in a good way of being able to capitalize on everything, because the Olympic trials are, a thing that in high school, my dad was a really big like running inspiration for me in terms of like getting me into the sport. We would get track and field news every month. I'd scroll through the magazine, look at all the top high school times. Say, I literally can't believe that high school guys like me are running 8:30 something, 8:40 something for 2 miles when I'm more than a minute behind. Look at all these cross country results. Look at all these pro results and everything. And he gave me the goal of making my name into track and field news at some time during my running career. And he always thought, and we always thought, that it would be during college, and I'd hit maybe a top 10 NCAA time after building up over years and years. But it turns out that I got my name in it via that marathon that I ran. And it was actually the last print edition of track and field news ever before they moved online. So it was kind of like a really, really cool full circle thing where they, listed the top American marathon times of 2017. And I happened to get in the very last issue. And that's something that I have, kind of framed, or that's like a super cool thing.
That's so funny. I used to, before you were born, I used to look at my dad's track and field news, and they would just have the columns in very small print in the back.
Yep.
with international, US, and like high school times.
Yep, exactly that. That's a way that I got to have almost like an encyclopedic memory of like, all these fast times, this person, this is where they rank and stuff. Just as a high schooler, I was the only person on the team that would care about professional track or watch the pre-classic, or care about actually like following up on these results and stuff. But it was cool to be able to see my name very, very low on the list, like very, very like like squeaking in barely, but I was very glad to do it for sure.
Hey, any ink is good ink.
Yes. Very true.
So there's something like 500,000 or so Americans who finished a marathon, I think, in the last year. So just making Olympic qualifiers means you're 1 in 1,000, closer to 1 in 10,000. So super successful. So we've been talking a lot about volume, and it's clear that you thrive on volume, which is great for the marathon, but it's even better for ultras. What have you thought about running ultras?
Yeah, I'm very interested in it. I think that every distance runner thinks they're a distance runner says the longer the race distance, the better I do. That's what I thought in high school, going from the mile to the 2 mile, or going from that 2 mile to the 5K. But actually running a marathons on the road hurt a lot. And I find that it's a very big advantage to be very fast for them, especially if you have a collegiate background of, being able to run sub 14 minutes in the 5K. You have that inherent ability to tolerate like more speed. So you can run 2:10 in the marathon or something like that. I hope that I'd be, a 2:0 something marathoner eventually, but right now it doesn't look like that's necessarily my wheelhouse. So I'd love to do the ultras, because I've been a fan of every distance in the sport, and especially with some of the other running stuff that I do. I do cover and I do research, the trails and the ultra stuff. Being in Colorado too, it's like, oh yeah, I'll just do this long trail race or something like that. When I was hurt over the winter, I thought, my competitive days of the marathon are over. I'll just switch to ultras and I'll just do trails. That was definitely 1 week of my life where I was like, I'm totally done. I'm never going to run road stuff again. Yeah. I'm only going to be trail running and stuff like that. I'm not that dramatic right now, but if I get hurt again, maybe we'll see. The thought of comrades, or the thought of, all these other high profile, longer road races, I will 100% do that. Yeah. I think that's in my wheelhouse. I think the ability to tolerate just time on feet and distance and being able to hurt for a long time is something that excites me. It doesn't scare me off. And being able to travel around the world to these different races, it just sounds so cool. So cool to me.
Okay, that's interesting. I know, I think a lot of people that are viewing the Running Otaku channel are following kind of those formulaic training programs from Daniels or Fitzinger or Hanson's. Right. So it sounds like you're more or less writing your own, and you've got a lot of experience to do so. Take us through, like for the Olympic Trials Marathon is in February.
Yep.
How far back do you start your marathon training cycle? Do you use pen and paper? Do you use Excel?
Yeah.
Take us through the process.
No, that's a great question. So I actually have, kind of recently started doing this because I realized via other people's posts on social media that they're starting to train for the trials and starting to think about the trials. I'm like, wait, I need to do that already. We're maybe 20 some weeks out or something like that, like 25 weeks, 24 weeks, and that's right on the edge of actually being able to put pen down to paper, put keystroke down to Excel, and say I need to formulate a plan right now to be a very specific block, whether it's a 4-week introduction, 2 times 8 weeks of very specific blocks building up, and then a little bit of a taper or whatever. I'm not at that point yet necessarily, but I do have a very strategic idea of how my next couple months will fit into a marathon buildup. For me personally, I don't have any pressure. I just get to show up on a starting line in Atlanta at the end of February on Leap Day in Atlanta, and I get to run a marathon, and I get to try and run it on fresh legs. And so I feel like I have a really good mindset towards developing fitness and saying, I don't necessarily need to be in this exact shape. I just need to keep improving my fitness week over week. And that's something that I have the benefit of because I'm not trying to make an Olympic team. I'm not trying to, keep my sponsorship for the next Olympic cycle. I'm showing up. I'm trying to let's say maybe beat my PR if I can. That would be great. I'm trying to beat my seed. If I'm seeded at this amount, I want to be top 100 or something like that in terms of the marathon. When it comes down to it, though, I say, okay, I identify that Atlanta is hilly. I identify that I have to be able to race a marathon, not just run a marathon, because I literally could go out right now and go run 26.2 miles.
You
I
do
could
every
do
day.
that. Yes. So I could do that. It's something that's possible. But to be able to race a marathon, not only mentally, but physically, and be able to look at the specific demands of the course, that's something that I'm being very cognizant of. I'm already practicing nutrition on long runs, just being able to make sure that I can train my body that way. I'm practicing a lot more hill work than I have in the past. I'm getting more of an idea of the shoes that I'll be wearing. I'm getting more of an idea what fitness I'm in currently, so I can set up a very logical progression over time and have a couple check-ins, whether they're goal races that are shorter than a marathon, or whether they might be another marathon before, just to kind of test things and see how my prep is going. So I'm being very diligent, very cognizant of the fact that I will be racing a marathon at the end of February, and what my training needs to look like to set myself up to be on the starting line, I think, is the most important thing, but also be able to tolerate a marathon at an all-out effort in a couple months' time, and not get too hyped up about I need to follow this exact thing for the next 24 weeks. I need to just make sure I'm sane and I'm actually running
Okay.
in February.
So, um, you have a bit of a running media empire, and you also work in the running industry. Can you tell us a
Sure.
little bit about all of the stuff you do online and where you work, and a little bit about that?
Oh man, yeah. So I troll the Let's Run message boards as my full-time job, my other full-time job. No, I'm kidding. So I work at Stride. That's my full-time job. So Stride is a running power meter. I know you've done a lot of stuff. I actually
Sure.
found a ton of your stuff just in terms of like the reviews we were doing. I share that around the office. I'm like, oh look, like we want this third-party stuff because it's so hard for us in the office to do stuff that's non-biased. We want to see more use cases and stuff like that. So I've been following your stuff specifically for a while. So I think one of my parts of my job is keeping a very good ear to the ground in terms of the rumblings of what's going on. What are people saying? What are runners doing? And I do a pretty good job at that because I host my own running podcast that I've been doing for a little bit over 2 years now. It's going into its third season. I co-host it with my friend Alex. She's based in Texas. I'm based in Colorado now. We have actually met in the first like season and a half. We actually never met in person. We were just doing an online running show, and that was the coolest thing. But yeah, I'm involved in the running podcast space. I help with social media for Stride. I do hundreds of emails a week for Stride. And I'm just a track fan as well. So I just love the sport. I just started doing my own like little YouTube vlog thing. And I think that's more of like a memento for myself because I did that in 2017. I started doing a video series from like January through March, trying to show like my training off, And I really, really regretted not continuing it through 2017 because I had a super hard time in like January through March in terms of training, races. They were going terribly. And then I was able to turn it around at the end of the year. And I was wishing that I was able to capture that journey. So that was kind of a catalyst in why I started, even if I wasn't publishing stuff to YouTube, I think it's fun to share that kind of stuff. I'd still be recording it for myself because I think
Yeah.
cataloging the journey and stuff like that is super interesting, especially for running, because the shift in demeanor and shift in dynamic can be represented so well by just capturing, a simple thing on video and just talking about your training and how you feel like it.
Oh, that's
So
interesting.
a lot of media stuff, definitely a lot of media stuff. I definitely unplug sometimes with a lot of running media.
Do you then kind of keep your own personal video running diary, or do you actually write things down, or just use Strava? What
Oh
do
yeah,
you?
I write things down. I have stuff sent to Strava because I've used Strava for a super long time. I'm not a fan of Strava. I like looking at other people's stuff. If I could disconnect my stuff and have nobody say anything, I'd do that in a heartbeat. But
Yeah,
I'd have a lot of angry people saying, "I'd like that's the only way I follow your training. Like I want to see how things are going and stuff."
yeah,
So I leave it up. But I'm not the biggest fan of that form of running social media. I get very very paranoid, or in the past I had a lot more problems with it. But anxiety about I feel bad about having to post this workout because it didn't go well, or what are people going to think when I do a 4 mile easy run and it's 850 per mile, and stuff like that. So like those are mental demons in the past that I've had to deal with. But now I'm totally fine like sharing the complete running journey and stuff. But there's definitely a lot of clips for my vlog, or other media stuff that I have that I don't post because I just decide yeah, like it's not worth it to post, or it doesn't work with my work schedule, so I can't edit it together and stuff like that in time. But
yeah.
yeah, I love running media. I have a really like the main reason I try and get involved is because I'm such a fan myself. But if I see something that I think would be improved or be better upon, and I can maybe throw my hat in the ring and try and do it, I definitely try and do that because I feel like it would maybe inspire some other, inspire is a terrible word for it, but maybe motivate some other people to make better quality stuff than I'm putting a little bit of effort into, and it would just make it better for everybody.
That's great. Is it okay in the show notes if I list all of your
Sure.
channels and everything?
Sure. Yeah, totally. Totally.
Fantastic. Who do you follow any other runners on YouTube or Instagram? Or
Oh
if you
yeah. Yeah.
do,
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
are some of your favorites?
Yeah, actually, this Zach Levitt guy just moved out here to Boulder to train for a bit, and I actually
Yeah,
just did a workout with him yesterday. Because it will never surprise me how small the running sphere is. I had a ton of growing pains is a very bad word for it, but a ton of like adjusting to do when I ran at my first U.S. championships in like 2016, when I was able to gain entry to U.S. road races and see all these famous Olympians and super famous people. Was like starstruck, and I still get starstruck from meeting the people that I get to meet, but I've just kind of gotten very used to the fact that I'll be running on a road and I'll just see Jenny Simpson go by, or you see all these famous people at these races and you're like, oh, like I'm friends with them, I'm in the same sphere and stuff. But in terms of like YouTube stuff or like running media stuff, I'm let me think. So like that, yeah, that Zach Levitt guy, I think that's really interesting. I think the
mhm,
college, like high school, college YouTube running stuff is still a world that's super untapped, and I think we'll
yeah,
see a ton more of that. Um, I don't necessarily like if I was in this situation, I wouldn't do what a couple of these guys have done and leave college
yeah,
to go join a YouTube thing, because I feel like YouTube as a platform itself is kind of unstable and it's not super trustworthy in terms of making a full time career out of, because you have no necessarily no security. You just hope they don't demonetize you, and
yeah,
you hope you can keep getting a lot of views and stuff. But I think it's super cool that media and a huge platform to share your voice and your creativity is so accessible now. Like anybody with an iPhone can go out and just make content. And if I was in high school, I would 100% done that. I would have
yeah.
asked my parents if I could buy a GoPro and film my runs with my friends, and post it and just do stuff like that, because I think it's such a fun creative experience. And why not, if you have the opportunity to kind of act upon that,
Yeah.
do it. I definitely follow a couple more people on YouTube, but I can't think of any specifics right now. But I think the kind of high school, college age people, it's been super interesting to see the rise of that recently. It's like the past 3 years. It's been just straight up in terms of like the number of people doing it.
I know. I wish I had that when I was in high school. All we had again was that track and field news with that
Right.
one column of like
Exactly.
8-point font.
Exactly. And it's just so much more accessible, which means so many more people can see it and then want to improve on it and everything too. So
Yeah, it's interesting. I actually I ran the 2018 Eugene Marathon,
yeah.
and I was coming back from the finish line. There's a bus that takes you back to all the hotels in
Hmm.
downtown Eugene, which is like 2 miles away.
Hmm.
I ended up sitting next to a guy who I had no idea who he was at the time, but he turned out to be Ryan Trahan.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so he was a
Yeah.
University of Texas
Yeah.
freshman cross country runner who had to drop out. He had to make the decision whether to stop his YouTube channel
Right.
or drop out of school because it
Yep.
NCAA rules. So he dropped out of school. He had like 25,000 subscribers then.
Hmm.
And then when I met him on the bus, like a month or two later, he was up to 50,000. Now he's over 1 million.
Yes, he did the water bottle company thing. I think was like the really big conflict of
Yeah.
interest thing too. So I've seen his stuff. He's a lot more of a prototypical YouTuber, I'd say now
Yeah.
that does some running stuff and stuff. But yeah, I definitely remember that name too.
Yeah. Yeah. He told me at the time that running was too niche for him and he was going to get into just general
Uh,
kind of content. And
Interesting.
in his case, it worked really well.
It worked super well, super well.
So you mentioned that you're from Columbus,
Yep.
but now you're in Boulder.
Hmm.
Obviously, Boulder is a running mecca. I'm assuming that's what drew you there.
Yeah, I visited with a couple of my friends. My roommate, who I was pacing at that marathon, he had spring break off because he was in grad school. And then a couple of my friends that were like juniors or seniors in college that I was running with in Columbus, they had spring break off. I was working a full time job at the running store I was managing, and I never took a vacation. This is the only vacation that I've ever actually taken from work that didn't actually involve like a race. So I felt very bad doing that, but I was like, this might be my only chance to go do that and like hang out with friends. So went for 5 days. I flew, and then I met them because they drove across the country. I had to like work bookend days. I couldn't just take a week off for it. And I met them out there. I flew in during the night. And then I remember waking up in the Airbnb the next morning. I slept on the couch, the curtains were open, and I saw the mountains for the first time. And that's the first time that I saw mountains like that, because I'd been to Albuquerque and Flagstaff before, so I'd been out west before, but I never actually got the chance to like kind of explore stuff for like a purely running trip. That was a little bit extended time. So I was out there for 5 days. Met up with some pro runners, ran Magnolia Road, did all the sightseeing and stuff from Running with the Buffaloes, the famous Colorado University book.
Sure.
Then I came back. Actually, before I came back, I called my now fiance. We were just dating then, and I said, "I think I want to move here. What do you think?" And this was like 3 days in, and this is what happens to everybody when they visit Boulder. You will 100%. If you're a stable adult, you will look up home prices, and you will say, "Oh my goodness, I cannot believe that stuff costs that much in Boulder."
Yeah.
And then you'll put your phone away. The next day, you look up home prices in the neighborhoods outside Boulder. And you'll want to move here just because it has that sort of draw, it has that sort of magic. So I went back to Columbus. I gave my 3 months notice to work. I said, I am going to move in the summer. I will find a job somehow. I'll either work in a running store still, or I'll do something else. And then I moved to Boulder because I was like, on my first run, I was like, I literally can't beat this. I cannot go back to Columbus and acknowledge the disservice that I'm doing to myself by not being out here if I have the opportunity to be out here, because I was 24 at the time or something like that. So I was like, I need to capitalize on this before I have that just feeling like I have to be stuck in Columbus or my hometown for not the rest of my life, but for the bit of my working career and stuff like that. So I moved, and it's been great.
Exactly. So let me ask you another question about Boulder, because I've spent all of I think 5 hours there once when I was going kind of just taking a look at it as I was driving to a ski resort and did the turn outside. So the stereotype is that like a woman coming out of her outback with her yoga pants on and her Lululemon bag and her juice cup, cold pressed juice,
Yep.
going into Whole Foods. Is that a fair caricature, or what is
Oh
it
yeah,
like
no,
there?
100%, 100%. I mean, I think you get a lot of mix of people, but you get um, specifically from what I've noticed in Boulder, there is a very big lack of diversity, which is something that I still find very strange and startling because I'm from Ohio and I was pretty well exposed to a pretty good sense of diversity. For Columbus is like the 14th largest city in the U.S. I lived, 5 miles outside of downtown. I went to Columbus Public Schools, which is the largest school district in Ohio, but it's also the poorest school district. So I had a lot of experience with what I would call cultural diversity. And moving to Boulder is a very big shock to the system for me. I think that a lot of people that might be from other areas that are like a little bit more well off or a little bit more affluent, they might find it a little bit more normal. But for me, I actually, yeah, have found it that stereotype. I was like in the past, I was like, oh yeah, it's like a hippie mecca and stuff. It definitely is 100%. There's there's a just different sense in the air, and that's what makes it unique. I can't really describe it well,
Yeah.
but just everything feels like not even like proper, but like hippie, cool, toned down. There's still like bad drivers, so like that's fine. It's still a college town and everything too, so you get a really big different feeling when school is in session versus all summer break. The roads are so much more quieter versus the holiday season when people are traveling in to go to these ski resorts and stuff for like the 3 to 4 month ski season. It is like that though. Like literally, I was going to say if you didn't say the Whole Foods thing at the end, I was
Yeah.
going to say yes, but they're in a Whole Foods parking lot too. That is 100%
Okay.
real. Yeah, totally real.
Okay. So it's true then. So tell me, I would just think that some people watching that are serious runners may think like you, like they want to move to running mecca, which in the U.S. would be Boulder or
Yep.
perhaps Flagstaff or
Yep.
maybe Truckee or Mammoth Lake,
Yep.
something like that. What? How is it? How has it met your expectations? Are you happy with the decision?
Yeah, I have not explored enough. I think just being here for a little bit over a year now, I know what areas I want to explore next because I think the biggest benefit of Boulder is that you can drive less than 3 hours and just be in all of this nature. Like if you draw this certain, kind of like radius to where you can get within like a 3 hour drive, which I feel like is a very, very manageable thing. If you, wake up at 5 a.m., you're on the road by 6, you're at your destination by 9, you can be there the whole day, then drive back. Um, the amount of nature that you can get to from Boulder within 3 hours is absolutely insane. Like you can make it well into Wyoming. Like you can make it like up to there. You can go down pretty far south, like way past Colorado Springs. But the amount of distance that you can travel west, because you don't want to travel east because you're going back to Kansas. So you
Yeah.
don't want to go back to Kansas if you're here. But and that's a joke. If anybody is in Kansas, I'm sorry. But you can go to Rocky Mountain National Park, and that's like an hour drive. You can go to Estes Park, which is from my apartment now. That's about like a 50-minute drive, and you can literally just be in the mountains, and it's so picturesque. But the stuff that I've learned about Boulder is how accessible the rest of Colorado is because
Mm.
you're right at the base of the Rocky Mountains, and you can drive very far and see so many cool things right at the base, being at the kind of base of the mountains.
What kind of running can you do right out your front door, like within 5 kilometers or so? What can you find?
Yeah. So for me specifically, I'm really close to the Boulder Reservoir, and that's where I do a lot of my workouts. It's really, really nice. Dirt roads. You have a really good perimeter loop. I can just be out the door into like the backcountry roads, basically, though, because I live in very North Boulder, so it's called actually like Gun Barrel is the name of it, and that's like the weirdest like town name that I've ever heard in my life. Like Gun Barrel, like Colorado is technically where I live, but it's Boulder proper still. But you can be on those roads where it's literally like the mile straight. It's just like a square block, and it's those type of roads where you won't see a car on like a Saturday or Sunday morning. But then I can also drive 10 minutes and be on like Pearl Street, which is like downtown Boulder. I can be at Target in like 8 minutes. So I can be like a big mix. So I can be totally like isolated and out in like what people would refer to as like the country, or you can be like in what Boulder would refer to as like city center, but there's no actual like city center. It's the weirdest thing. This is the first place I've ever lived, or like really visited with no city center. Like Pearl Street is like the big walking mall that's here, and that's what people deem as like downtown, but there's no real downtown Boulder.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So let me just ask a few kind of 1 or 2 word answer questions, and then we'll wrap up for today. So when it's cold out, tights or shorts over tights?
Tights, shorts under tights, actually.
Under tights?
Yep. Okay. I've done that since high school, at least. So like if I'm warming up for a workout, I just think it's very economical to be, wearing shorts under tights. And then if I have to like take off tights because they get too hot, like on the drive over or something, and I decide, hey, I don't really want to wear tights, I'm already prepared and stuff. But I do like half tights as well. Half tights. I'm a big half tight person.
But you can't wear shorts under that, right?
No. Don't do that. That's blasphemy. But maybe half tights under tights. If it's super cold, you need that extra like insulation and stuff. Okay.
Singlet tucked in or singlet hanging out?
Tucked in.
Okay. Music or no music?
Music and podcasts. 100%. If I'm running by myself, I am listening to something. I have nice wireless, like the not in ear headphones, like the AfterShokz. Yeah. I love those. I find that if I'm not listening to music and just trying to like get in the zone for like a workout, I like to use the time. Like let's say I'm running 10 to 15 hours a week. If I can learn just about like, even if it's not like an educational podcast topic, if I can just listen to other people talk and learn more about stuff, I will 100% take advantage of that time, because that's a lot of time during the year that you can learn stuff, I feel like.
Interesting. Okay. Favorite recovery shoe? Right now.
For recovery specifically, I'm a Hoka guy through and through. I do like the Brooks Levitate for like a very easy day shoe, but if my legs are feeling destroyed, Hoka Clifton 6 I've really been liking. I ran in that this morning. Hoka Bondi 4 is the one that I have. Those are 2 years old and they're still kicking. I probably have 600 miles on those, and they still feel the exact same as they did the first day out of the box.
Favorite tempo shoe?
Tempo shoe. I have been really enjoying the Nike Zoom Fly 3. Really enjoying that one.
Okay. I got to give that a try. And favorite marathon racing shoe?
It's the cheater shoe, the 4%. I'm a 4% person. I haven't tried on the next percent, but I'm an OG 4%. So like with that upper, that's not the Flyknit. The Flyknit's okay, but it hurts my toes if I run in it too long.
Okay.
So
next question. Let'srun.com. Mostly funny, mostly informative, or mostly trolls?
Mostly informative for the purposes that I use. I think it's definitely a mix of the three, but I found it very helpful. It was very influential as I started coaching myself, for all the resources that are there.
Okay. And since you work at Stride,
yep.
For the foot pod, it's got a clip. Black clip or orange clip?
I am team orange clip all the way through. Team orange clip for sure.
How many data fields do you have on your watch?
I only look at one screen unless I'm like checking how far I've gone. If I'm doing like a turnaround, I look at the power on one screen. That's it. So we have this new one called Stride Zones, and I've been beta testing a couple different versions of it, but it tells me all I need to know. I just need to see, like my lap power, and that's what I see. If I have to, like check my distance, I'll scroll down, but the only custom data field I have on there is the Stride one. Otherwise, I just have a timer and a distance data field.
Very cool. If you could win a race of any distance, in any event, in any setting, what race would it be?
I think it would be a World Championship Marathon 2021 in front of a home crowd in Eugene. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. And if you could give up the last 5 years of your life to actually win that race, would you do it?
Yeah, I think so.
And the last question. So Kipchoge's got his sub-2 attempt. What do you predict his time will be?
Oh, man. I think with the insider stuff that I've heard and the shoes that I've seen that they're wearing, I would not be surprised if they ran like 1:58:50 or something like that. I would not be surprised if it's like not even close in terms of like the barrier, like the 1:59:59. I don't think they're targeting that. I think they're targeting like 1:58:59 because they think they can.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gotta tune in for that. That's amazing.
Yeah. I'm excited. That's 10 days away or something like that. It's coming up close.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, Evan, I want to thank you so much. I don't want to keep you. You've probably got either something, a recovery run or
I do have an
stretching or something going on right now.
Yep. I did Magnolia this morning, so I went up with one of my friends. So it's a fun Wednesday morning before it starts snowing here, because that'll be a real thing in the mountains. You gotta get all the running in at high elevation before the snow rolls in.
Have you ever put the like spikes or screws in your shoes?
No, never. I probably should, because there's been some runs in the past where I'm like, I could have used that, but then I just default to going to the treadmill. But I could probably use that for sure for this season.
All right. Well, we'll end it there. Evan, thank you so much. It was a pleasure having you.
This was so fun. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay.
So how great was that? I love stories of perseverance, of people working really hard to achieve their goals. And Evan is definitely the epitome of that. He's someone we can all cheer for in Atlanta coming up in a few months for those Olympic trials. So that's it for this week. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked what you saw, go ahead and hit the like button. If you really liked what you saw, go ahead, click subscribe and that little bell next to it. That way you'll be instantly notified every time I upload a new video. Remember, in running and in life, keep your head up and always move forward. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.